law matters? Of course it does. Welcome once again. I'm Debbie Morais, your host and moderator. As we tell you, this long-running program continues to provide information and resources and relevant examples to help you with legal matters because it matters. A better understanding of the law puts you in a better position to decide how to protect yourself, your family, and at times your business. As we present various topics, you may decide, of course, to handle some issues yourself. We try to help you prepare for that. Our goal at all times is to help you be the best prepared that you can to save time, money, and also to achieve the best possible results. And again, we'd like to welcome and thank Attorney David Bazar.
Thank you.
From the Bazar and Associates law firm in East Providence, who continues to weigh in on the topics that we cover. And today, not surprisingly, 'tis the season to be jolly, also to be a social host, a Santa Claus, and a gift giver. So if you host a holiday party, we want you to be safe, we want you to be protected, we want you to not suffer some possible tragedies, whether it's personal or financial, and we want to help you when it comes to underage drinkers or the too toasted guests. We also want to help you in case you are thinking about being a Santa Claus and a gift giver, because there are many who would like to steal the goodwill and good wishes of Christmas. And so they not only steal the best deals, but also steal your identity and your money. We're going to cover all of those things, hopefully today, with some interesting new twists as they've happened. Let's begin first with the idea that people like to party once again because they can. David, so for those who want to be social hosts, can you give us a recap of Dram Laws and the rest?
Sure. So we actually haven't had to deal with some of this for a while because of the pandemic, so it's good to be able to talk about some of it again. So there's a difference between dram shop laws and social hosting laws. And generally speaking, it's whether you're being paid or paying the establishment for a drink, or if it's being provided to you. As, for example, a Christmas party at a home or something of that nature. So dram shop laws apply in almost every state, and they have different rules in different states. But generally speaking, if someone is overserved at a bar or a restaurant and they don't take proper steps and they're either negligent or reckless, and it depends on what standard each state has, if you then, as the overserved person, go out and get into an accident with an innocent third party, that third party can not only sue you, the person who drank too much, but potentially the place that served you too much. That's Dram Shop Act.
And about underage drinkers, very interesting. As I was preparing for this time around, Rhode Island and Mass has some similarities, but tell us what the status is right now whether you are breaking the law if you allow your child's underage guests to consume alcohol in your home.
Okay.
Seems like you shouldn't.
All right, so social hosting, serving liquor, alcohol to people over 21, different states have different rules on that as well. So similar to the Dram Shop Act in Massachusetts, there is a case from 1986, I think, or thereabouts, that established social liability, social hosting law for somebody who overserves someone at their own home and then they go out and have an accident and injure a third party. Different from serving someone under 18 or 21, actually. We'll get back to that. Rhode Island, the law in Rhode Island on social host liability is different. The Rhode Island Supreme Court said it's up to the legislature to decide whether a cause of action lies for over-serving someone at your party, and they put the bulk of the responsibility on the person consuming the alcohol and being responsible for injuring somebody. There is an exception to that. In Rhode Island, it would be if there's a special relationship that exists between the person being served the alcohol and the host serving the alcohol. And so far, the Supreme Court has basically said that that is mostly serving an underage person. In the case, I think it was a high school graduation party, and you have a special relationship and duty to how that person served, how they're cared for, and the possible harm that they may cause by being served or overserved the alcohol. Other than that, there seems to be right now no special relationship for someone over 21 if they're served at a party in Rhode Island.
So, In some states, you are allowed to serve your underage child if it's your underage child. In other states, you can't serve your underage child, even in your own home, which is very interesting. In some cases, the law wouldn't know unless there was some issue. What if you don't know that the person who had imbibed was underage? What's the responsibility of the adult on the premises who's hosting a party, whose child has friends, their birthdays you might not know? Where's the liability with that, and where do you draw the line?
So, again, now, serving a minor, someone under 21 actually.
Under 21?
In Rhode Island, Massachusetts, there is actually both social hosting law potential liability. Civilly, and criminally. And in fact, Rhode Island in around 2008 tightened up our laws because there seemed to have been a loophole in that you could only be liable for serving alcohol to someone in the home, not on the property. And they expanded it to on the property. But in general, to answer your question, the liability is if you serve someone who's under 21 and you're caught having that underage party or something like that, you have criminal liability. If you don't know how old they are, then I still think you can have criminal liability because you're under an obligation to find out. Show me your driver's license. There's got to be some responsibility on your part to know whom it is that you're serving. So there will be liability, in my opinion, criminally, if you're caught serving someone under the age of 21.
Okay. And when we talk about adults, I think we've talked about this topic in previous years about Uncle Ernie over imbibing when he's at your party. And he leaves. He left before you knew, or you did know, doesn't matter. And he injures someone else. What's the current status of the liability in that circumstance?
So if you're negligent in over-serving somebody at your home and it's Uncle Ernie, and you know that Uncle Ernie has had too much to drink, you could get Uncle Ernie a cab, or these days you could get Lyft or Uber and send Uncle Ernie home. If you let Uncle Ernie leave with his own car, with having been overserved in Massachusetts, there's going to be potential liability to the third party that Uncle Ernie hits.
So is that third party going to sue Uncle Ernie as well as you because you hosted the party?
I would assume that's what most attorneys would do. Yeah. Attorneys, when we have personal injury cases, like to have as many pockets as we can look to and reach into as possible, because oftentimes when you have a case like that where someone was injured by a drunk driver, usually it's a serious crash with serious injuries, and so you want to find as much coverage as you can for that.
So while we're speaking about money, let's talk about, and I know you're not an insurance agent, but most people will talk about or speak to the fact that they have homeowners insurance and that covers some liability. So would that homeowners liability insurance cover your fees if there's litigation? Where does that end? Does it vary state to state?
Yeah, so you would want to actually look at your insurance policy, and if you have an agent, speak to your agent about it. But generally, if you're covered by a homeowner's policy that provides coverage for this type of claim, then it'll also provide coverage for the defense of that claim. And so the insurance company will hire an attorney for you. They'll pay the attorney if there's coverage. And depending on your policy, that cost could either come out of the coverage liability that you have, or it could be separate. That's why you need to know what your policy
check
provides.
that out. Interestingly, again, in preparing for this, and you mentioned it earlier, that laws vary state to state. It was very interesting to actually find a state, and I believe it was Michigan, that holds the social host responsible for an underage drinker, but not liable for an adult. They are responsible for themselves, as they say. So it really is worthwhile for you to check out the state that you're in or going to, or you're going to be hosting a party
Right.
in.
Well, and that's actually closer to the law in Rhode Island, as opposed to Massachusetts, which can impose liability even for an over 21 aged person who's overserved.
And so while we're talking about social hosting in your home, some parents will host a party at a hotel or another facility, and there will be wait staff serving food and perhaps liquor. Let's assume then they have the responsibility to card that person who wants to be served, but if they overindulge, can you, as the host of the party, still be sued if that bartender didn't shut someone off or didn't happen to notice? Is the thought perhaps that the social host, the person who hosts the party, still in control of the room, even if they aren't serving every drink and every meal?
It depends on the situation. If the person who's having the party, for example, rents a hotel room,
Yes.
even though it's not at their home and they're serving somebody who's under 21 and they're providing the alcohol or allowing alcohol to be provided to someone under 21, they can be liable. But if you've hired a professional, a caterer, or you have it at a restaurant or bar that's serving the alcohol, owns the alcohol, controls the alcohol, then that's probably a little barrier between you and the other person for liability. They may be the ones that have to step in and take responsibility.
So is it the onus still on you to know how much of a barrier that is? Is it a very thin barrier or is it a substantial one?
Well, yeah, I think it is, and you should know, because if you're hiring someone to run the party, provide the alcohol, you would want them to know that they're going to be children who are under 21 and that they're responsible for knowing who those people are and not serving them.
Good. So let's talk as if we were having a party, David. Let's help our guests, our viewers, think about what we could do to help protect them. So in one way, it would certainly, if we're hosting, I think I'd like to hire a bartender just so I don't have to do it. That might help off the bat to put some sort of a barrier between. What other things might you suggest, David?
Well,
you started to, in fact, earlier.
If you're having a party at your own home and you've hired a professional bartender, for example, to serve, then one of the things you might ask is, do you have dram shop insurance or liquor liability insurance? And if they do, you could even ask them to sign something saying that they're responsible for making sure that people are served professionally and carefully and that they're liable for it. That's at least a really good start. And again, it depends what state you're in. Massachusetts, you could be liable, so you want to make sure you can cover that liability by having some professional step in with insurance. In Rhode Island, there's not likely to be liability if it's for someone over 21. If it's for someone under 21, again, if you can get them to say, yes, we'll card people and we'll make sure that we're only serving people who are over 21, you might be able to pass the liability back to them, especially if you have something in writing.
If you have something in writing, always have something in writing, as you said. Yep. It certainly makes sense. If you're hosting a party, you should have other beverages besides those that are alcohol.
Yeah.
It makes sense that you might let everyone know approximately the time that you're going to start winding down the party and start serving coffee as soon as you find reasonable. Do you think it makes sense that you have the Uber number close by, as you mentioned earlier, or Lyft, or a designated driver?
Right. Some plan in place so that if there is someone who's over-imbibed, you can protect them and other people out there who would be at risk if they drove. So yeah, I think it's always a good plan. And I heard something, excuse me, somewhere one time where it's better to have the argument than the liability.
Good point. So if you're hosting and you're a good host, you're likely to circulate through the group of people that you're with. You can observe how they're acting if they tend to be acting differently. At that point, does it make sense that you know who they came with and who they might be leaving with, and perhaps connect with them to head off at the pass a possible problem?
As much precaution as you can take, it will be helpful in keeping yourself from any liability.
And you said it would be better to have the argument than the liability. Would you consider it within reason to be able to say to someone, I think you've had enough, Ernie, maybe I should take your keys and I'll get you a ride home? Better to do that?
Yeah, that's the argument I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Just be upfront and say, I need to protect you, I need to protect myself and anybody else who would be in harm's way. And so we'll get your car to you tomorrow.
Good point to add to that, that's right. While we're talking about alcohol, these days people are still concerned about health and relative to COVID. There is the cdc.gov that has its guidance about how to, when to, who should be vaccinated, who should not, what to do if you're with large gatherings or small gatherings. We assume that if you're having a home party, it's likely to be small gatherings, and likely you'll be able to speak with your guests when they arrive, if they, to let them know that we all are or we all aren't vaccinated. What else might you say to the guests or the family members who brought children? Would you say we have extra masks here and here's the hand sanitizer? Would these be new accoutrements to the game day plan?
I've been invited to parties where different people have different rules and different things that they're concerned with and what they want you to do. I've actually been invited to a party that was indoors, big space, but they wanted everybody to have both vaccination and proof of a negative test before the party.
Proof too.
Both.
Check your coat and check your
card
at the door. Interesting. Curious to ask, did people respond with apprehension, or were they quick to say, oh, here it is?
Well, it wasn't my party, but I will tell you from what I heard anecdotally that everybody who went had no problem saying, here's my card and here's my negative test. And I'm assuming that there were people who were invited that didn't go because they didn't want to do either. So if it's your own private party, I think that you can set whatever rules you want. People don't have a right to be invited or to come. So you can do whatever you feel is necessary for your safety and comfort of the people you're inviting.
Sounds right. When people are having parties at offices now, this is a conversation about alcohol, but also about the COVID issue. People who have large corporations, they may have hundreds of people. To avoid the issue about too large a gathering, they're considering breaking the party into sets of 2 or 3 or whatever. I'm not sure how they're actually doing that, but that's a COVID issue. If you were hosting a party with 300 people, 500 people, or 100 times 3 rooms, it would seem that under all circumstances you would have that off-site and off-premises, so someone else would take care of the liability in that situation. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and we've talked about that before, that if you're having an office function and you want to keep your liability to a minimum, have it off-site and have a professional caterer, restaurant, or whoever be the intermediary who's going to be responsible for monitoring what people do and drink and so forth.
And of course, if you're on the East Coast, more than likely in this time of the year, if it's winter time, your party's going to need to be inside versus if you're on the West Coast or down south and you're able to have a backyard barbecue in the middle of December,
Right.
Which certainly takes some issue away from the outside and the COVID function or the COVID problem rather than completely eliminating the alcohol problem.
I agree with that. And I've seen some other companies that used to have parties or gatherings or lunch before the holidays at their own office, and I've been told that some of those folks who used to have like everyone in a small conference room or something eating lunch together have said, we might do something, but we might do it more by buffet, come in, get your food, and spread out, so that people are comfortable taking their mask off, or if they have masks off, they can eat separately within some spacing with other people.
That sounds like a good practical consideration as well. So one other thing came up as a question: when someone is having a party and there's a problem, we hope that it doesn't happen, and someone is sued, bankruptcy. Does that protect someone from who's being sued? Does that protect you if you are being sued?
It depends on the type of case that's being brought. So if you're being sued for negligence, perhaps bankruptcy could protect you if you needed to go that route. If it's intentional tort or recklessness even, that's more of a borderline question. Bankruptcy laws have different rules for different types of cases that are brought against you. But for the most part, if you're serving alcohol and you're negligent in how you serve it, if you had to file bankruptcy, you might be able to get rid of that judgment through a bankruptcy court.
Is it difficult, David, to have someone prove that they weren't intentionally causing a problem that arose. They just didn't happen to know that this person was underage. They didn't happen to know they were off-site when the kids had a party, that they didn't know how much a person had to drink. Is intention difficult to prove in these cases, David?
For civil liability, it doesn't necessarily have to be intentional. It can be negligent, which is that you just didn't live up to the duty you owed to protect both the person who's drinking and the public. So if you have a duty and you breach that duty, it doesn't have to be something you breached intentionally, just whether or not you lived up to the standard of a reasonable person in the same circumstances. Did you do what any reasonable person would do, or did you slip below that standard and breach that duty? That's a law school answer for you.
That is, but something for someone to consider anyway. So let's talk a little bit about holiday shopping. We've been hearing that the stores are empty shelves. People are shopping online. With online shopping, we know that there have been issues about some fraud, about you not getting what you thought you would get. What kind of advice might you offer to someone who has been shopping online? They ordered a gift. They know when the gift is supposed to be coming. They can't be home. We've talked about this a little bit before. They didn't know that they couldn't be home. What are they supposed to do now when the Amazon or whatever else is going to be delivering a package to their doorstep and it's likely to be snitched?
Well, it's the same thing we've talked about for a few years now.
Yes.
First of all, when you shop online, make sure you're doing it at a reputable site. Major retailers have websites online now. Other online retailers have sites that you know, and you go in and you find it and you check that, double check it to make sure you're at that site. That's step number one. Step number two, with ordering it, there's, when you check out, I'm sure certain conditions you can put on that, and if one of the things you're concerned about is you bought a fairly expensive gift that's being delivered to you and you want to make sure that you're there when it comes, you might be able to specify that in the shipping instructions. If you can, I would do that. And then, of course, those are just the issues that we've been dealing with for several years at least now.
Yes, and with the rise of these issues right now, and the fact that more people are able to go to stores than were, say, last year during the heat of COVID, many are ordering and then going to pick up something at the store so that they have it already prepared, bagged, and can grab and go. And I don't mean that without paying it. I mean they actually have paid for it in advance and can legitimately grab and take it when it's convenient for them without them having to worry about what stays on the stairs.
And it's a very good alternative if you're not sure if you can be home when you think it may come or not come, to say, all right, I bought it at a major retailer. They give me the option to say that, all right, I ordered it, I paid for it, but I'm going to pick it up at the retail store. Do that. It's a good option.
If it's a possibility. And for those who are doing gift cards, we've had this discussion before too, and people get smarter and better at it every year. You go to a store and you say, I'm not sure what I'm going to get for Aunt Mary, so you decide to get the card. The wisdom is, be careful that you don't take the card that's on the front of the shelf, ask for, or take the one that's in the back, or perhaps watch the clerk, because sometimes they're in on it, as in a scam. How does one protect oneself with that?
Yeah,
all that?
so
Very difficult.
The reason you say take the one in the back or whatever is because there's a way for people to come in through and do something so that they actually have taken the value of whatever was on that card, and you're buying a card with no value. That's part of that scam that you're talking about. It's just like anything else. You want to be careful with what you do, but also with the clerk, dealing with the clerk, say, there might be a way for the clerk to double check the card for you to make sure the value's on there. Or perhaps if you can, there's usually on those cards some rub-off things that need to be done before they can be activated. Just make sure that that's all on there.
Make sure it's intact before you share it. Makes sense. An issue about online shopping, there's always an issue about online shopping. If you have access to Wi-Fi in other than a protected environment, in a public environment, at an airport, at a shopping center, who knows where else, you are very likely to have that not be a protected network. If you went shopping and you thought you bought something, maybe you did buy something and it was safe, but you find that you have an email that says, "Congratulations, David, your new fireplace will be delivered on Thursday," except you didn't do that. What should you do in that case? You know that it's not anything that you had ordered. You don't know yet whether or not someone has tapped a card or has been able to infiltrate your identity somehow. What should you do?
So it's like anything else. When I receive an email, I want to see where it's from, determine whether or not it has any authenticity, and if there's a number or something that I can call, I might call that number and try to figure out what's at issue there without giving any of my information. And so to go back to the beginning of your premise, I wouldn't buy anything on an open Wi-Fi if it's not protected. If I'm going to do it, I'll do it from home where I have my own security and that type of thing. It just doesn't make sense to me to risk it in an open environment.
So while we say that our purpose here is to help people prevent issues, certainly be very careful about any of that when you're using Wi-Fi in an area that is not protected.
Right.
Another thing that people often have done, for example, when that's happened, say you are told from your email that you bought this at Amazon. If you go directly to your Amazon account when you are in a safe environment, you can certainly look to see if that actually had hit your credit card or your cart, or if it's in transit, so there's a way that you can at least call and hopefully circumvent it before it becomes a problem.
And the important point there is that you're going and checking your online information, not going through whatever email that you received and clicking into it or anything of that nature.
And while we're speaking about holiday scams, our goal always is to deal with the things that are legal and what legal issues are involved with shopping in something that is not illegal, but certainly a problem that we need to share with our viewers. There's something called a Grinch Bot that I guess became popular last year, or a scalper bot. And it is not illegal, but it is a bot that's shopping alongside you, for example, and it has the ability to access those Nike shoes or that PS5 game controller that's a hot commodity and buy it faster and more of them than you can, at which point you are held hostage to either buy a more expensive item or run the risk of disappointing someone who wants those sneakers or those shoes. So I can't say that this is a scam that we can do anything about, but we certainly can let people know that those Grinches are the ones that are stealing the deals, and it might be worthwhile for you to check the store directly rather than trying to do it online, because sometimes if the store has it, you are avoiding that issue entirely.
It's why you'll see sometimes a requirement to check a box that you're not a robot.
It's good to know. Well, we hope that this helps you to have a happy holiday season. We thank you for tuning into The Law Matters. As we say, stay tuned to The Law Matters. It matters to you. Happy holidays.